Somewhere right now, a stadium is being finished. A screen is being installed in a public square. A child is learning the name of a player they have never seen play in person. And in less than a year, every one of them will be part of something that has never happened before in the history of human civilization. The 2026 FIFA World Cup is not just the next edition of the tournament, it is a breaking point. A moment where every force that has been building in global football, the growth of the sport in new continents, the explosion of streaming, the expansion of the tournament itself, the arrival of 3 host nations across one border, collides into a single summer that will produce viewing numbers the world has never seen. Not for any Olympics, not for any Super Bowl, not for any event ever. And most people watching do not yet understand how different this one is going to be. This is why 2026 will be the most watched sporting event in human history. Start with the number that changes everything. 48 teams. Every World Cup from 1998 to 2022 had 32 teams. That format produced dramatic tournaments, legendary moments, unforgettable shocks. But 32 teams also meant that entire continents felt like spectators rather than participants. Africa received 5 spots. Asia received 4.5. CONCACAF, North and Central America, and the Caribbean received 3.5. Hundreds of millions of football fans watched their national team eliminated in qualifying, then watched the tournament from a distance. 2026 changes that completely. 48 teams means 9 spots for Africa, 8.5 for Asia, 6 for CONCACAF, 4.5 for South America. The nations entering the World Cup for the first time or returning after long absences bring with them entire populations who have never before watched their flag on that stage. When a country qualifies for the World Cup for the first time, that is not just a football result. That is a national event. Schools close, streets empty. People who have never watched a football match in their lives sit in front of a screen and feel something they did not expect to feel. Multiply that by the new nations arriving in 2026. The audience begins. Before the first match is even played. Now look at where those matches will be played. The United States, Canada, and Mexico are co-hosting the 2026 World Cup. 16 cities, 11 in the United States alone. From Los Angeles to New York, from Dallas to Seattle, from Kansas City to Miami. This is not an incidental detail. The United States is the 3rd most populous country on Earth. It has a rapidly growing football culture that has been building since the 1994 World Cup transformed the sport's profile in North America. Major League Soccer went from 10 teams in 1996 to 30 teams by the mid-2020s. The U.S. women's national team made football a mainstream passion for an entire generation. And now the men's tournament, the biggest version of it in history, arrives in American stadiums that hold 80, 90, 100,000 people. The American television market alone is worth more than the entire global broadcasting deal for previous tournaments, when NBC, Fox, and Telemundo broadcast World Cup matches into American living rooms in prime time, because the host nation's time zone means evening kickoffs for the largest games. The audience numbers will be unlike anything North American sports television has ever recorded. FIFA's own projections estimate a cumulative global audience of 10 billion views across the tournament. 10 billion. The entire planet's population is 8 billion. The maths only work because billions of people watch multiple matches. But television is only one part of this. The 2026 World Cup is the first to be fully embedded in the streaming era. In 2018, streaming was growing. In 2022, it was significant. By 2026, it is the primary way hundreds of millions of people consume live sport. Every match available on multiple platforms simultaneously. Every goal clipped and shared within seconds across social media to audiences that do not even know they are watching football until they are. The 2022 World Cup in Qatar generated over 1 trillion social media impressions across the tournament. 1 trillion. In a tournament that started at 2 a.m. for half of Europe and ran through working hours for the Americas. Now imagine that same tournament running in time zones that suit North America, that suit South America, that suit the evening primetime slots of Europe. The barrier between the casual viewer and the live broadcast drops to almost nothing. There's something else about 2026 that goes beyond the numbers. The football world arrives at this tournament at a moment of generational transition, unlike anything since the early 2000s. The era of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, arguably the two greatest players in the history of the sport, is ending. Messi won the World Cup in Qatar in 2022. It was, by almost every account, the most dramatic World Cup final ever played. Argentina against France. 3 goals in the last 15 minutes of normal time from Kylian Mbappe to level the match. A penalty shootout. A victory that felt more like a film than a football match. And when Messi lifted that trophy, the football world understood it was watching a handover. Kylian Mbappe steps into 2026 as the probable face of the tournament. 27 years old, at the peak of his physical powers, playing in a France squad that has the depth to win back-to-back World Cups for the first time since Brazil did it in 1958 and 1962. England arrives with a generation of players who have never won a major tournament but have come closer than any English team in 60 years. Brazil, always Brazil. 5 World Cup titles and a burning desire to reclaim the tournament on the continent that first gave them their greatest triumphs. And the host nation, the United States, enters with a young squad whose best players have spent years developing in European leagues, returning home to play in front of their own country for the first time at a World Cup. The narratives are already written. They are just waiting for the pitch. Understand what the World Cup does that no other sporting event can replicate. It does not ask for prior knowledge. You do not need to understand the offside rule to feel what a crowd feels when a nation scores in the final minutes. You do not need to know football tactics to feel the silence of a missed penalty. The World Cup speaks in a language that bypasses football entirely and reaches something older: belonging, pride, hope, heartbreak. A researcher at the London School of Economics studied the psychological impact of World Cup matches on national mood and found that a host nation's loss in the tournament correlates with measurable drops in reported well-being across the population. Not sports fans. The population. The tournament reaches people who do not follow sport. That is the true measure of the World Cup scale. Not the broadcast deals, not the stadium capacities, not the streaming numbers. It is the fact that in the summer of 2026, billions of people who disagree about everything, politics, culture, religion, history, will sit down in front of the same images at the same moment and feel the same thing. They will not know they share it with a billion others, but they will. And on the night the final is played, in one of those enormous American stadiums, under lights that illuminate every corner of a pitch that the whole world is watching, a player will do something that no camera angle or highlight reel will fully capture. Something that happens in the half second between the ball leaving the boot and the net moving. A moment that will be watched by more human beings simultaneously than any moment in history. Somewhere right now, a stadium is being finished. A screen is being installed in a public square. A child is learning the name of a player they have never seen in person, and they are all moving, without knowing it, toward the same night, the most watched moment in the history of human sport.